Welcome to the Ice Age, where to us, the internal combustion engine is irreplaceable and will forever be celebrated like a mythical dragon of legend. You can keep your silent EV assassins. Here, we like explosions and have hearts of fire. Hey all, Tom here, and welcome back to another episode of the Ice Age, a show all about the internal combustion engine. We don't talk about EVs here unless if we're to make fun of them. In the show we're all about internal combustions here. I'm going to do this in an enclosed space and hotbox myself with some internal combustion engine fumes. We have the technology. Any second now. Silencio. So, I've been fangirling over Lamborghini Aventadors lately, or fanboying. It's 2022. Take this Aventador SV, for example. Alright? You'll notice this Aventador SV sounds very similar to a 90s legend. Not sure yet? Well, the answer is the McLaren F1. All right, now let's play it side by side. Isn't that insane? The Lamborghini Aventador's 6.5 liter V12. I don't know if it's the design of the headers or some other aspect of the exhaust system, or maybe it's the firing order. The Lamborghini Aventador sounds just like a McLaren F1. Not the other way around. It's not the F1 sounds like the Aventador. Don't say that. It's gonna piss people off. Isn't that so cool? So if you want a car that has, well, actually more horsepower than a McLaren F1 and sounds just like a McLaren F1 and has a better gearbox and, well, doesn't cost over $10 million, you got the Aventador. And if you're in the market for an Aventador, first of all, congratulations, you must be doing something right. But if you are in the market for an Aventador, you've got, well, 4 or 5 choices, all right? Let's start with the LP700-4. The 2011-2012 first Aventadors. 700 horsepower, all-wheel drive, single clutch gearbox, very popular in orange. Then in about 2017, you've got the LP750-4, otherwise known as the Lamborghini Aventador SV. Personally, my favorite version. It's got a little bit more power. It's got a really nice exterior, very similar to the exterior of the Murcielago SV. With the carbon wing, new front and rear bumpers, side skirts. On the inside, there's a couple interior changes. The most notable one being that in the most aggressive setting, your tachometer is like that of a race car's. But if you are looking for ultimate performance potential, I really have to recommend the Aventador S and the SVJ. But just bearing in mind, if you don't have the skills to really take it, it's the result of slight differences in the car's engineering that are quite precise and quite cool. If you don't have the skills to take advantage of that, this really doesn't apply to you. But the Aventador S and the SVJ, and the Ultimate actually, they all have rear wheel steering. Now the Aventador S is, you know, the LP740-4, you know, so let's go with 10 horsepower less than the SV. That might not be always true. Every car is probably a little different. That car has almost as much power as an SV. It's got rear wheel steering. I imagine the shifting of the single clutch gearbox is improved. And then you've got the SVJ, which is lighter. That's the LP770. So even more power than the SV. It's lighter, better aerodynamics, got the rear wheel steering. It is so much better, even with those imperceptible differences, that it is faster than the SV on the Nürburgring by 15 seconds, which is interesting because in a video recently done by CarWow, where they did drag races between all 4 different versions, it was actually quite close, except for this 700-4. If you want to, you know, win in a drag race, the original Aventador isn't going to get you there. It's a lot slower than all the others, for whatever reason. But interestingly, the Aventador S, the SV, and the SVJ were all very close. The SV and the SVJ being almost neck and neck sometimes, if I remember correctly, which is fascinating. So if you care only about straight line speed, buying an SVJ is kind of a waste of money. But if you care about road course performance and things like that and think you can take advantage of the improvements, the SVJ is for you. Still single clutch. It's really interesting because the SVJ, while it is based on the dinosaur Aventador, it did hold the Nürburgring production car record for a little while. They actually knocked Porsche off of the podium, off of the pedestal. They beat Porsche at the Nürburgring. Not many manufacturers get to do that. But then Porsche did take it back with their 911 GT2. And the 911 GT2 is freakishly fast. Those cars are nuts, man. I'm a BMW guy, but you can't deny the GT2 is a hell of a car. So that's all very interesting. The SVJ, while it goes for like almost $1 million now for whatever reason, one of the most notable things about the SVJ as well is that the exhaust system is reminiscent of the design they introduced on the Huracan Performante and then later carried over to the Huracan Evo and the STO with the kind of the center exit design. The SVJ does not sound like ordinary Aventadors, all right? It has a completely different exhaust note. So if you're looking for a car that sounds like an SV, you're not really going to get that from an SVJ. But so you win and you lose some. The Aventador SV was actually my first Lambo love. Specifically, it was a Rosso Bia, or a Rosso Bia if you want to sound Italian, just roll your tongue until you sound Italian. It was a Rosso Bia red Aventador SV with the black wheels, black interior, with you know, red trim and stitchings and all that on the inside. And I loved it. I think it had a Capristo exhaust like the Aventador SV we just played a clip of, which is also Rosso Bia. And it sounded very good. The only other color I like is Viola Parsife, which I fell in love with because of Dr. M3's Huracan Performante. When he first received that, the one he ordered, that made me really like the Huracan too. But the thing is, with the Aventador, the SV, unfortunately, only one coupe and one roadster were ever painted officially Viola Parsife. So I'd love a Viola Parsife Aventador coupe, but unfortunately, Barney750 already has it on Instagram, and I imagine he would not sell it for any small amount of money, considering it is actually one of one, and it would feel kind of weird taking another SV and painting it that, because it doesn't seem right. However, in a recent Daily Driven Exotics video, when they were going to pick up their Porsche Carrera GT from Protective Film Solutions, there was an Aventador SV Roadster there in a color I had never seen before, a color reminiscent of Ford's Mistachrome or the R34 GTR's Midnight Purple. This color is called Blue Lyle, and it has only ever been painted on that SV Roadster. Well, what if I were to get an SV Coupe and paint it Blue Lyle? There's no other Blue Lyle SVs out there, and it looks freaking cool. I hope Lambo isn't the type of company to send out cease and desist, so I don't think that'll be a problem. But now let's talk about, is it possible to have fun in modern cars these days? Because with EVs showing up and kind of taking over the market by force with the help of the government, it's a bit worrying, all right? Because a lot of us, we care about sports car theater, the entertainment, the drama, a diverse experience that a car has to offer, the dynamicness of it. Electric vehicles are all about insane torque, crazy accelerations, gadgets, gizmos, and all kinds of stuff. That doesn't really appeal to a lot of us. And you might say, oh, you're just a boomer or whatever, or you're old. I'm 24. My taste in cars is boomer taste maybe, but I'm young and all my favorite cars are being labeled as not good for the environment. And yet, it is still possible to have fun in a modern internal combustion engine car. The one behind me is actually a great example, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. Let's talk about new cars being built, because this has been around for a little while. First up, we've got Toyota, the Toyota Corolla GR. And we got to talk about that because it is their 100% in-house built sports car, or a hot hatch. And I'm not normally a hot hatch guy, but I'm attracted to this car for several reasons. For one, it's the result of people being in charge that care about automotive enthusiasts, okay? In David Patterson's That Dude in Blue's video of the reveal, because he was invited to it, which is pretty cool, he asked them, how did this car come about? Why does this car even exist? And they basically said it's a result of the right people being in charge and wanting to give enthusiasts something they deserve, more or less. That's not verbatim. That's the vibe I got. You know, that's how it touched my heart and that's how it translated to me. If you're one of those people that think actions speak louder than words, well, think about this. This car is 100% built in-house, you know, after the whole joint venture with BMW and the Supra and that not being received particularly well. Pretty much the entire car is all Toyota. You know, the chassis, the design, the engine, it's all there. And by the way, the engine, if you haven't seen those leaked pictures of it, you know, 3 cylinders, 100 horsepower per cylinder, which is cool. Those are some beefy cylinder walls, guys. Like, it's gonna be neat. I mean, the exhaust out the back and the multiple pipes, I guess, is a little odd, but who cares? Who cares? You gotta be pretty nitpicky to be annoyed by that, considering there's the aftermarket. If you're one of those people that think actions speak louder than words, this car is only offered in a manual because their philosophy is, well, we don't really have the ability to develop like a DCT or a ZF8 speed DSG or whatever it is to put into the car. And putting in a CVT in a sports car just seems stupid and lazy and like, you know, a cop-out, all right? Looking at you, Subaru, that shows they care because that might not, you know, that's probably not gonna be great for their sales of the car. All right, I don't think manuals sell very well out here. So yeah, that's a good jab at Subaru. But also, I can't keep myself from being negative here. I gotta kind of roast Subaru, even though I love Subaru. Say what you will about Mitsubishi and the Eclipse and crossovers and things like that, but the Evo, if it had to end, it got the end it deserved. Be glad the Mitsubishi Evo didn't get like a Mitsubishi Evo 11 and then have it be dragged out to become what the WRX is today, with the Lancer only being continued and the Evo being canceled and potentially brought back as an EV. That would be heartbreaking, okay? The Evo got the finale it deserved. Subaru should have just killed the WRX instead of dragging its bloody corpse through the dirt, so yeah, that's a shame. But let's move on to Nissan. And before we talk about the Nissan Z, because that's what I want to talk about, the R35 is being discontinued. And that's good for one reason and bad for another. The bad part is that it's the reason why it's being discontinued. They probably would have kept that going for a few more years. But the reason they're not is because governments all over the world, they're making emissions requirements more strict, more stringent, and Nissan can't really get that car to pass all over. So now it's just slowly being discontinued and stopping production and sales in all various different countries. Now it's just stopping completely. Will there even be an R36? I don't know. they might not be able to put the VR38 in it because maybe that's part of what's not passing emissions. Will they even bother developing a new engine for the GTR? Is there going to be a hiatus of the GTR name and then they'll bring it back as just a 100% EV? Will it be a hybrid? I don't know. It's a bit frightening that one of the biggest automotive badges is that might be it. But if it dies like this, you know, it's better than being dragged through the dirt and coming back as an EV or some kind of weird crossover. Let's hope it doesn't get the Mustang Mach-E treatment. But there's hope, because the Nissan Z exists. And that is actually one of the few examples in existence where a car company has built a car harking back to one of its older models and having it not look terrible, and pulling it off, offering a manual, having a tastefully very nice looking interior, a good exterior, and tons of tuning potential. Because it's the VR30, if I remember correctly, out of the Red Sport. I mean, the Nissan Z, even at its price point, is a hilariously good deal. Like, the Mustang behind me is $50,000. The Nissan Z is less, has 400 horsepower, and can easily be tuned to make tons more. And it's a modern car. Though I think it's built on the 370Z kind of architecture, so it's not 100% new, but maybe it's new enough. And it's kind of interesting. Toyota kind of being possibly the winners of this modern contest, you know, especially with saying we're only going to go manual. You know, the WRX, if you want our performance version of the WRX, the base WRX, not the STI, you have to have a CVT and you get a little bit of extra power. It's the same thing with the BMW M4, isn't it? If you want our competition package, you're not allowed to have a manual. You have to have, I think it's an 8-speed, not a dual clutch. Because the car I want to talk about actually is the BMW M4 CSL that they just revealed or announced. And I thought, hey, that's actually really cool. I might want to order one of those. What would it take to order one? Well, I haven't ordered one, and the reason why is because it's $140,000, and that's just insane. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very good-looking car, okay? I feel like that car, for whatever reason, even with the big grills, it looks okay. I think it looks pretty cool. I like the hood, I like the color, I like the CSL badge. I'm kind of a sucker for that, obviously, as an E46 owner. So, you know, but $140,000? It doesn't come with a carbon airbox. It doesn't come with anything that warrants that kind of money, man. You're getting close to used Huracan money with that. That's not a $140,000 experience. There's no way. It doesn't even have a dual clutch. But then again, I'm not a mechanic or an engineer. Maybe there's a reason why they went with the 8-speed rather than the 7-speed dual clutch. I just like the idea of dual clutches, I guess, but my opinion means about this much, as it should.
An apparent street takeover turns deadly in Compton when vehicles collide, killing 2 women.
Today we got to talk about something I don't think I've ever actually talked about. I've touched on it in like 5 seconds of dialogue in like a Fast and the Furious video. That Dude in Blue made a video on it pretty recently. Life of Paulos has talked about this. Intersection takeovers. Nuggets hooning around and causing accidents and getting the media to label us car enthusiasts as villains. Because what happens is, some person that likes to kiss their dad on the lips will go into an intersection with their $400 pickup truck or a finance through the roof 392 Charger and do donuts around it, flip over, kill someone, wreck someone else's car. People will try and run away from the cops when they show up. Violence will happen, guns will happen, whatever happens. And then the media covers it, and the headline is, street racers cause thousands and thousands of dollars of property damage, or street racers strike again and people die. And I'm just like, I've just got a couple of sports cars. I'm not killing people. Why am I getting grouped with these people? Granted, I don't street race as my official statement, but I also don't have cars that are going to win any freaking street races, so obviously I'm not a street racer. But the problem is that, okay, sure, you might not be a street racer. The media is just talking about street racers. But then, here's the problem. Anyone with a modified car to an ordinary human being, they're going to categorize you as a street racer. Because why else would you modify your car? Well, as you guys know, us automotive enthusiasts don't give a shit about justifying our actions with our cars and our the way we personalize them and drive them. It's not supposed to make sense, it's just supposed to make us feel good. But they can't really comprehend that. So they just think of us as street racers, and then they associate us with the people that are morons. So anyone watching, if you are one of those people that don't know how to handle oversteer, don't respect the torque of your vehicles, and you go to these intersection takeovers and you kill people or put people at risk or do whatever, f*** you, I hate you, and you're a c***, because you are ruining it for all the good people that just want to enjoy their cars until the governments around the world make them illegal. You're just gonna make it easier for them to mark us all as villains. So yeah, shred your license and check yourself into an insane asylum. That's all I've got to say to you, on camera. On a lighter note, not much lighter, one dude in a Tesla, I think it might have even been a Plaid, the car that doesn't come with ceramic brakes but does come with 1,000 horsepower, because that makes sense. Someone thought he was in the Fast and the Furious and was in, I guess, an after party, not really an official Tesla meet. I don't want to, because this happened in Alex Choi's video. Someone decided to go to the place where all the jumps in the first Fast and the Furious happened, and decided to, basically make their Tesla Plaid go airborne at one of these big hills, do the jump, ruin the Tesla, and even managed to crash into an innocent dude's Subaru. I think it was like a Legacy or something. I can't remember. It wasn't Alex Choi's fault. He didn't condone it. He didn't even know it was going to happen until it happened. He just happened to be holding the camera at the time. It's just very strange behavior. And I think it even happened again another time. I'm not really going to show too much footage. I'm not going to even give them, their 5 seconds of fame, because they don't deserve it. This Tesla person doesn't deserve it. I don't even know if they caught him. I'm just glad no one was hurt, because if that had hit a person, it would have killed them. Man, that wasn't really on a lighter note. Okay, I'm gonna try again. On a lighter note, this legend, all right, this isn't automotive enthusiast news. This isn't motorsport news. This isn't even automotive industry news. But this guy right here, I don't know what you're supposed to do when you find yourself in a situation where you're on the street, in your car, and there's a tornado squaring up with you. What are you supposed to do? Do you drive away? Do you get out of your car? Do you sit still? What do you do? Well, this kid just fucking tanked a tornado and lived.
Storm Chaser video captures that red pickup being flipped on its side, spun around, then flipped right side again, allowing the teen to then drive away. Riley Leone says he knew there was going to be stormy weather on Monday, but he had a job interview he didn't want to miss.
He even drove away. This man's a legend. This isn't super recent news. I don't know if he's traumatized. I don't know I imagine it was pretty kind of freaky, but to him it might have just been the same way we all experience going over a pothole. It happens, we turn off the music and drive home in silence. Was he like that? He might have been coming home from work or going to a job interview or something. You just go, he's vibing, having a good day driving along, gets tossed around by a tornado, turns off the music, kind of just has to wind down and go home. I hope he gets a free new truck, man. That's really good publicity for the manufacturer. That's crazy. So, that's lighter news, I would say. But yeah, like I said, what do you do? Tornado's squaring up with you across the street, and he was just like, all right, bet. And then he wins, because the tornado had to go back up into the fucking sky, whereas he just went home and he was fine. So I think he won. All right, let's talk about some aftermarket focused news. All right, so Valentino Balboni, famous former Lamborghini test driver. I think his replacement's name was Max Venturi or something. They're really good at finding people with great names. Imagine a Lamborghini Aventador Max Venturi, or a Venturi. A Venturi anything, really. Sorry, there's bugs everywhere. He is also, his name is associated with like the exclusive exhaust systems offered on the Aventador SV. Well, in case you didn't know, you can also get an exhaust system for the SVJ, and now you can get an exhaust system for the STO. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make to the actual note of the Huracan. So I get the impression it's very hard to change the exhaust note of the Huracan without messing with the headers. And even then, it's hard to tell. But, you know, might have been able to work his magic and do something kind of cool. Obviously, I feel like it's going to be a limited run of these exhaust systems. So if you've got an STO or an SVJ, it might be worth picking up. Because you might be able to run that exhaust system with a turbo kit. I'm not sure. Because I don't know where the turbos typically go in those cars. But, you know. So, you know, could be really cool. I have no idea how much it's going to cost, though. It's going to be outrageously expensive. Because it's usually full titanium, handmade, and all that kind of stuff. Up next, are you willing to pay $450,000 for an R32 GTR? No? Me neither. But you can, and you can do this by buying the Built by Legends R32 GTR. Matt Farah of The Smoking Tire did a great job covering it and why it costs so much. It's using a lot of really good Mines goodies. You know, it was stripped down to the chassis, bare metal, fully restored, rotisserie, the whole 9 yards. I can't get into it because I would be pretending to talk about something I don't completely understand. But $450,000 is a lot, considering R32 GTRs now, in good condition, are usually between 50 and, I guess, 70 US dollars? 1,000 US dollars, I should say. Not, I really don't understand how money works, apparently. $450,000, you know, that's a really expensive car. And they've just started doing the same thing with R34 GTRs. They're working on one right now. R34 GTRs. In case you forgot, Series 1 base GTRs and V-Specs all go for $130,000 to $170,000. And then if you go for the V-Spec 2s or the M-Spec NERs or whatever, you're looking at $500,000. So if you get a V-Spec R34 GTR and then you get a Built by Legends package, is it gonna be like 800 grand? What's happening is people will charge as much as they can as long as people will buy it. And when you've got a package like this, where you've broke it down, reinforced the chassis, stripped it down to the metal, there's no rust, it's showroom condition, brand new, OEM quality with, you know, Mines goodies on it. How do you argue with that? It's insane. It's like buying a house or a down payment on a Bugatti or an SVJ or a Pagani. It's a lot. The Z-Tunes used to go for, I think, $500,000 maybe 10 years ago. I don't know what they go for now. I don't want to know. If you're able to afford a Built by Legends car, you could have just bought a Z-Tune 10 years ago. So, you know, these days, if you want to be economical, you could spend 35 grand on an R34 GTT, spend, let's say 7 grand as a rough estimate, to import it to the US. Then you have to get it shipped to you from wherever it arrives at whatever port, unless if you live right by the port, in which case, lucky you. Otherwise, you'll probably have to spend, I'd have to spend like $1,500 to get it transported to me. And then you've got a GTT. You can get an RB26 or an RB30. You can do the drivetrain swap. I don't know where you're gonna find a V160 transmission from an R34 GTR though. So you should probably just go with like an OS88 or something like that. You can do up the interior and it'll still cost less than an R34 GTR. Just be warned that the up badge shaming community will come after you if you put a GTR badge on that car, and they'll probably come after you anyways because the people who own these cars and the 9-year-olds who wish they did but never will seem to have the same mentality as each other, in that if you decide to build something that you can enjoy and can actually afford, they're still going to try and make you feel like you failed at something. So just be aware of that. Even if you don't put GTR badges on your car, they're still going to be d***s. But I'm going to be honest, I don't see why. I mean, Lee-Bird's RB30 powered R34 GTT looks just like a GTR. Uses, I think, an East Bear kit. I think I'd be using an EP Racing on mine. I think I've said too much, but his car is great. Over 1,000 horsepower. Rear-wheel drive for fun, all-wheel drive for serious stuff. Can't knock that. And he's got GTR badges on it, and who f***ing cares, man? But if you want to be extra blasphemous, get, let's say, a left-hand drive auto NA Supra with a Targa, swap in a 2JZ GTE, fine. Single turbo it. But instead of getting a V160 or a V161 transmission, get the BMW M4 DCT and using a whiff, what is it called? If you want to work with whiff bits, you can put a DCT 7-speed transmission in your A80 Supra. That's gonna piss off a lot of purists, all right? But here's the thing, you can still shift, you can put it in auto when you're in traffic, you can have tons and tons of power, and downshifts will still sound great, and upshifts will be perfect every time. You line up a DCT Supra with 1,000 horsepower, right suspension, right tires, all that sort of stuff, and then you line up with a 6-speed manual Supra set up the same way, who do you think's gonna win? The DCT is going to have DCT launch control. The shifts are going to be faster than a human could possibly do. It's going to be like racing against a sequential. It's going to be racing against a sequential, essentially. But lastly, in case you didn't know, even some of the most mundane aftermarket parts that you can get for more exotic cars or even supercars can be extremely expensive. All right, so like, the headers on my E46 M3 that are gonna show up, American Racing 6-to-1 long tube headers. Those are about 3,000 bucks, right? Headers for like an Aventador or just the exhaust system for an Aventador, that would probably run you $20,000, okay? Bearing that in mind, there are people who will build exotics the same way we build our Honda Civics. Everything will be touched, everything will be changed, there will be creativity, and it will just be insane fit and finish. So basically not a SEMA build. Alex Troy has decided to make GTA characters jealous with his Huracan 580-2 converted to look like a Super Trofeo Evo race car using the genuine race car body kit, but he's made sure that the fit and finish on it is actually road car quality. You know, it's not janky like a race car meant to be beat up and stuff. It's got a phone charger, a wireless phone charger in the hood. It's got all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, bearing in mind 580-2, so that probably wasn't a simple thing to do. It's got a twin turbo kit. It's got interior stuff done to it. It's got the one-off wrap with a Notatech that he, I think, pioneered. I think it's called Unicorn Pink or something like that. It's named after him, or named for him. I can't remember how much it was. I'm not going to spoil it. You'll just have to check out his video. It's a ton. Like, it's a lot more than what I thought. It's really, it's interesting because modifying a supercar, you're basically paying motorsport GT3 race car kind of prices. Because if I haven't talked about this already, the body kit used on the BMW M3 GTR is like $70,000 to $80,000 straight from BMW, if they'll give it to you. And if it'll even fit on your street chassis car, or if you even have an actual race chassis. $70,000, that's like buying a Huracan or a 458 wide body kit in full carbon from Liberty Walk. You know, the exhaust system on the race car is made of Inconel. The headers are $10,000 each. That's like buying exhaust parts for an Aventador or a Huracan or a 458 or a McLaren. That's the kind of league of stuff you're dealing with. All right, we all love the BMW M3 GTR on this channel. Like literally half of my audience would take the M3 GTR over the R34 GTR. It's like a split down the middle. I did a video in the past about how to get Brian's Too Fast, Too Furious Skyline sound. That got a couple million views. This might not happen again with this video, but today we're going to talk about how to get the BMW M3 GTR sound in your own personal E46 M3 street car. But first, I've got to ask, which sound are you actually trying to get in your street car? Because for the record, starting out, that kind of mechanical whining sound you're hearing is not a supercharger. Even in Need for Speed Most Wanted, the video game I'm sure we're all thinking of, that car was naturally aspirated. The mechanical whining sound you're hearing in the video game and in all the videos that we've seen on YouTube, that sound is the sound of straight cut gears and the racing transmission they used, whether it was Hewland, Hollinger, X-Track, doesn't matter. It's straight cut gears that make that noise. And so if you're planning on just replicating that sound and you're keeping the S54 in your car, you can actually get a Drenth DG500. The torque rating, you know, is high enough that the S54 won't breach that. I think it was originally made for the S65 V8 in the E92 M3, so you don't need to worry about that. It works just fine in the E46 M3 with the S54, and it makes the good, you know, straight cut gear sound. If you plan on getting something that has more torque than the S54, you're gonna wanna get the, like, let's say a Hollinger RD6, right? That's like $24,000 to $30,000, but it's got, I think it's a 650 Newton meter torque rating. So you're not gonna break that. So when it comes to the engine sound, let's say, all right, sure, you want the straight cut gear sound, but what about the engine sound? Well, if you want the engine sound from Need for Speed Most Wanted, got some bad news for you. The engine sound they used in that game was not actually from the BMW M3 GTR. It was actually from the 4.2 liter V8 of a TVR Cerbera, or at least the 4.2 is one of the cars that makes the same sound. Here's a clip. So here's the thing. I don't think you're gonna wanna do a TVR swap into your E46. I can't imagine that will be massively reliable. I think even TVR owners would back me up on that. But if you want to replicate the real life sound of the E46 M3, you're more in luck, okay? You're more in luck. Basically, the real life BMW M3 GTR, its most famous engine in its most famous incarnation was the P60 B40, a 4-liter, 600-ish horsepower prototype flat plane crank V8. And now the most important part of that, two most important parts, is that it's a prototype, so you don't get to have it. Even if you have $25 million, BMW won't give it to you. Secondly, flat plane crankshaft. That's what gives it that kind of exotic race car Le Mans note, okay? Problem is, there is not a single BMW road car that I can think of that has ever come with a V8 with a flat plane crankshaft that civilians can buy. The S65 B40 is like an 8,000 RPM cross-plane V8, and it sounds very good. It was in the E92 M3 and the E90. The racing version of it was called the P65 B40. That had a flat plane crankshaft, but it's not exactly streetable. It's a race-only engine. It requires race gas and all sorts of things that are very inconvenient to ordinary people. And plus they cost sometimes 100,000 euros just to buy in complete form. So probably not on most people's list of things they can do. Obviously, that is the ultimate choice if you want all BMW parts. Like, here's a clip of an E46, genuine E46 chassis race car from BMW, but it has a Z4 GT3 P65 B44, a 4.4 liter, mated to an X-Track, you know, nearly $100,000 transmission. All that put together, you've got the ultimate E46 M3 GTR. In fact, I would say that car is going to be better than an M3 GTR. So, if you've got the money, you can do that. But let's be realistic here. If I only showed you that, you'd all be very disappointed. So if you want something that you can potentially afford one day, you might have to go with something that wasn't made by BMW. If you want that engine sound and that transmission sound, you're gonna have to get a Hollinger RD6 and some kind of flat plane crankshaft V8. You can get an engine out of a 458, you could get a McLaren V8, or you could get something brand new that is also naturally aspirated and makes a lot of power. The LT6 in the new Chevy Corvette C8 Z06. 670 horsepower, naturally aspirated, with an 8,500 RPM redline. And it sounds just like the BMW M3 GTR P60 engine. Now, when it comes to tunability, famously, the C8 Stingray is a bit tricky. If you want to make more power, you need to do like a Motec piggyback system and all kinds of stuff. I don't know if there's a standalone available for that engine. I'm not aware. I know that the gearbox is a bit of a nightmare as well, but you know, you don't need to worry about the gearbox because you're going sequential. Maybe it's possible to make a standalone for the LT6, or maybe you can make it work by using the Z06 factory engine management system, have the sequential, and just use the stock tune. I mean, 670 horsepower is already more horsepower than the M3 GTR made, and you know, the M3 is a light car. It'll be plenty. It'll be great on a road course. It'll be fine on the street. I think that's my recommendation, you know. Hopefully Chevy offer the LT6 as a crate engine. Hopefully we can find a way to make it work with computers, and hopefully it's not too heavily encrypted to where it's unusable and anything else. I think that's what we all need to hope for. Chevy LT6, Z06 engine, get a Hollinger RD6 because the Drenth transmission won't be able to handle the torque of the LT6, I don't think. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I want to do one day with my M3. If they make it a crate engine, I'm probably going to buy a Chevy LT6 and put it into the M3. Now, it's a lot better than an LS swap. It's going to sound the same. If BMW are ever like, hey man, we've got a flat plane crankshaft here from a P65, you want to convert an S65? Sure. I don't know if I want to pay for it though, and if they do it, sure, fine. Those are the various levels. If you want the most wanted sound, sorry, that's a TVR. If you want the transmission sound, that's actually the easiest sound to get with just getting a straight cut transmission. Drenth, it's like $10,000 or something. It's not really that expensive as far as racing gearboxes go. You can do no lift shifting as well if you want. With a shift cut, you can do auto rev match. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with sequentials. If you want the real life V8 engine sound, you could put an E92 M3 engine into the car and it'll sound good, but it'll have that kind of muscle car burble when you rev it. An exhaust system with the right headers might get rid of some of that and make it sound exotic. But if you want the real deal, you'll need something flat plane from someone else. You know, a McLaren 720 engine, a 458 engine. The thing is though, I don't know if the V8, you know, the 5.2 Voodoo motor from the GT350 would work, because that still sounds a lot like a typical American V8. It's got a little bit of that exotic sound. I just don't know if it would sound right. But I think that's also due in part to the way the exhaust is routed and made architecturally. So it might be a little inescapable. So maybe through the E46 M3 exhaust, maybe the Voodoo motor would sound good. Can't completely write it off because obviously I can't say with 100% certainty it's not what you need. Because that's got an 8,200 RPM red line, or maybe even higher, I'm not sure. And it makes decent power. It makes, I think, 500 something horsepower, which is still great in an E46 M3. And if you keep it naturally aspirated, that's pretty cool too. But for me, I think I'm gonna commit to the LT6, 670 horsepower, 480 pound-feet of torque. So, do you guys remember when I noticed that dude in blue was hanging out with Evan Shanks and I figured he was reviewing some of his cars? Well, I was right. He reviewed a bunch. You guys know I like Mitsubishi Evos. he ended up reviewing Evan's very nice Mitsubishi Evo, one of the earliest ones ever. Hilariously, I'm not super familiar with those earlier gen cars, but he reviewed that. I found it interesting because it doesn't come with the same 4G63 that you got in the later versions of the cars, like in the Evo 7 and onwards, or maybe even the Evo 6, I'm not sure. It came with the same 4G63 as like the Eclipse GST and the DSM cars. I thought that was kind of fascinating to learn. But Evan also drove his IS300, a 2J car, and his A80 Supra, another 2J car. But let's talk about the Supra for a second, all right? The Supra was originally an NA car, and he didn't swap in a GTE. He just decided to turbo the NA 2JZ, which, you know, to a lot of people might be a little strange thing to do, but it's really interesting because they talked about how, you know, how it handled the increase in power, the difference in the internals, how it made different intake sounds compared to the normal GTE, how the intake sounds were kind of louder, I guess, more pronounced, and all kinds of things like that. And I just thought that was really fascinating because, you know, like I said when I was talking about the 7-speed sacrilegious build on an A80 Supra, I said put in a GTE, but maybe you don't have to. You know, unless if you're trying to get tons and tons of power on stock internals. If you just want 400, 500 horsepower, you know, an NAT might be fine. Moving on to the undeniably extremely credible Matt Farah at the Smoking Tire. He drove the latest generation of the Audi RS3, the second gen. And it looks kind of cool. The grill's a bit more obnoxious, which is a bit strange, but sure. It's a little faster, still sounds great. Yeah, I really like the Audi RS3. At this point, ordering one is cheaper than buying a first gen used. I'm gonna be honest with you. And that's kind of frightening. I don't know how long that's going to last, but the market's crazy. But it's on my wish list, a first gen or a second gen. I really love that 5-cylinder turbo engine in that RS3. I like the way it looks, the sound. For some reason, the whole recipe of the car, even, you know, the weird stance of having the bigger wheels in the front and the smaller ones in the back to make it handle a certain way. The whole car is so cool. I just think it's so cool. And it sounds basically like half of an underground racing twin turbo Huracan, you know? It's got that sound, just a slightly lower red line, I guess. And they're ridiculously fast. They respond to power upgrades amazingly. There are some fast RS3s out there. Even just full bolt-ons and some tunes and a catless exhaust. You'll get a fast car. But man, my wish list is getting long these days. You know, RS3, I still want an R34 of some kind, a GTT, a GTR, whatever. An Aventador of some kind someday, or a Huracan. I wish I had a loud something. I've just got a loud voice, you know, or like an Evo 7. I've got a long list. A Targa Supra is on there too. Where am I gonna put all this stuff? How am I going to afford all this stuff? This means I have to work more, which I'm not excited about, but I can do it. But Evan, by the way, in case you're watching, I saw your whole, you know, struggles with registering a personalized license plate for your Evo in Texas. In case you guys didn't know, he tried to get a customized license plate that said Rare Boy for his Mitsubishi Evo, because his car is pretty, you know, it's a rare example. It's because of the paint, I believe. It's in very good condition. It looks nice. And he thought, let's call it Rare Boy. B-O-I, okay? That license plate got rejected. And the reason being, when he called them up, I think it was the DMV or something, he called them up, and the cited reason for why is because they do not allow license plates that have anything in them that reference gender, sexuality, or race. Maybe other things too, like religion or whatever. And I just thought, Texas, the state where women get denied health care when they have a miscarriage or get executed when they get an abortion, or Texas, the place where the police wait until your kids are dead to go into a school during a school shooting. But they draw the line at personalized license plates. I'm a Texan, right? I was born there. I didn't really live there very long. Those are some really funky priorities, no matter how you look at it. That's a bit strange. That doesn't line up. That's not consistent. This is a bit spicy to talk about, so I'm not sure how this is going to go. I don't know if I'm going to have to take this down, if people are going to be offended by it. If I did offend you, I apologize. I don't have the mental capacity to understand how I could offend anybody saying any of this. But if I did, I apologize. I don't condone sexist, racist, any of that behavior. It's not cool. Don't be like that. And if you are, I don't know, live in a molehill somewhere and don't interact with the rest of society and don't vote, if that even makes a difference. Die in a fire. Moving on to some other cool updates from automotive YouTubers. We like to kind of give some updates on automotive YouTubers. Evan Shanks has a build, you know, after my own heart with his Mercedes-AMG GT3 build, race car body kit on the street. Looks great. I can't wait to see it fully painted and finished. I don't know if he's done it yet. If he has, I feel really embarrassed because I haven't seen it in my feed. But the fit and finish is really nice. I think he used a Euro spec non-AMG front bumper on it. I can't remember. Still looks really, really good. It's really low. The wing is nice. It sounds nice. And I think he's really excited to have it be finished. I think he's been really wanting to get that done. I know I've still got to get a body kit for my car, and I know how it feels to kind of have a really big project where all the parts are so expensive and you're waiting on stuff. You just want to move to the next step, but you can't because you need to install something first or buy something first or something needs to arrive. That's everybody's experience, right? Unless if you have a domestic, in which case everything is made in America and then everything gets shipped to you in like 3 weeks. Up next in what used to be Europe, we have Black Panther, you know, Mr. Need for Speed himself, recently got a Mitsubishi Eclipse from one of his subscribers. In case you didn't know, the Mitsubishi Eclipse really doesn't exist outside of the US. Definitely doesn't exist in the UK, so it's actually a pretty rare sight there. It definitely needs some restorative work done to it, but it looks like he's gonna do some pretty neat stuff to it. It looks like it was set up to make all kinds of different power. The interior is a bit shoddy. But, you know, he's a guy that prefers the Eclipse to the Supra, and I think he's very excited to build that car. He's got several very nice cars. He's got a Mitsubishi Evo 10. He's got, I think he's got a, what's it called? An Astra. I think that's what it's called, a Vauxhall Astra. And then he's got, and I'm incredibly jealous, a Bayside Blue single turbo Z-Tune converted, though I think he still has the V-Spec 2 hood, R34 GTR V-Spec 2. And he got it before the market just became stupid. So, I remember he made a comment when he first got it saying, we're gonna have to recover from this purchase for a while. Bro, we're all recovering from this market, and we don't even own these cars. What are we supposed to do now? His car is probably doubled in value at this point. Up next, Amelia Hartford with her C8 twin-turbo Stingray and her 9.8 liter big block S550. Let's start with the C8, the Corvette, the thing that really, I think, viralized her and is kind of her forte now, the C8 twin-turbo Corvette, or however you want to say it. That's a weird syntax. Twin-turbo C8 Corvette. There we go. I think they had a little bit of engine trouble, but she's not deterred by it. And I think, from what I understand, she's no longer going to be going for world records anymore. She wants to be competitive now within like a certain class, I think it sounds like. So instead of going for the most power and the fastest runs, she's going to try and compete in a class. I don't know if she's gonna need a roll cage in that car. I don't think she has one. Try and beat people within that class in that car. And I think that'll be really interesting to see. But with the S550, what's really interesting is I've showed you this engine. I've showed you her 9.8 liter big block supercharged monster with the blower that ruins all visibility. The engine blew. But the funny thing is that they knew it was going to, because the engine wasn't actually built for forced induction, but they did it anyways, because they were planning on tearing it down and rebuilding it anyways. And I think that's a really cool attitude to have, honestly. They were like, screw it, we want to see what we can do with this and then break it, and then we'll make it what we need it to be, get the compression ratio right, and go for 2,000 horsepower, it sounds like. I think it's really, really, really cool. It's a neat attitude to have, and I think probably the best one to have. Oh no, the engine broke. Let's use this as an opportunity to move on to bigger and better things. Let's go on to becoming competitive with the Corvette, and now let's tear down the Mustang and make it built to do what we want it to do. We had our fun. That's badass. Also, Adam LZ, I want to talk about this because I think it's really unique. He bought back his first car. I think it's like an E46 sedan or something like that. And it's like an older BMW, a non-M BMW. I've got to say, I kind of relate to that a little bit. I would really love to one day buy back my first car, my WRX. Because I loved that car. I didn't love the transmission so much. It was made of glass. But, you know, if I got it back, I would swap out the transmission in something that's not going to lose third gear. Because I had a lot of fun driving it around. Lots of awesome memories in that car, you know. I love my M3. The Mustang's cool. I'm sure when I get an R34, that'll be cool. But your first car, the memories you get in that are irreplaceable. And you can't replicate that. So I think he's working on it. He's making it a little bit better, restoring it, making it a bit more refined. But I envy him. That's really cool. He's got an insane collection of cars, but that's actually the thing I envy about him the most is going, you know what? I can financially afford to just buy back my first car, no matter what problems it has, and keep it this time. I'd love to be able to buy back my WRX one day and not have it financially affect me that much and just, you know, either keep it the way it is or build it up to how I originally wanted it to be, rather than go and buy a WRX STI of the same generation. I just feel like that wouldn't be the same. I'd want my old car back. And I know none of the original Top Gear trio will see this, but James May and Richard Hammond have, in the past, done videos where they roast YouTubers' cars. I'm not famous. I've got 54,000 subscribers. He's probably not going to do this to me anytime soon. But I'm a little jealous anyways, because I grew up with Top Gear, and they did do, you know, a video on an E46 M3, you know, talking about all the things done to it, and I'm just like, man, I really wish, you know, finish the car in at least its first iteration, get the airbox on, get the exhaust on, and be like, hey, Richard, check this out. What do you think? That would be really cool. It would be really cool to just talk to one of the original trio guys. And if you want to see the best Skyline collection stateside on YouTube, check out Rival Garage. Okay, they've got an RB30 R32 GTR, an R33 GTR, a single turbo Midnight Purple 2 R34 GTR that breathes f***ing fire. Totally your speed. I don't even know who I'm talking to, but I know it's your speed. Carwile also did a recent video on, you know, comparing all the generations of the GTR name, R32, 33, 34, and then the 35, even though it's not technically a Skyline. Shush. Obviously, the drag race they do, the result is not surprising, but, you know, we're living in a time when we might not get another generation of the R34, R35. We might not get another generation of GTR cars with emissions regulations being so stringent. So it was neat to see how far the cars had come. And it reminds you that the R35, even though it's been around for a long time, long enough to, it shows you it was a hell of a powerhouse. It used to be the poor man's supercar. It still is if you want to get one used, obviously. Not so much brand new. Hopefully we get an R36. Problem is if it becomes a hybrid, all the development costs, it might make the MSRP, the sale price, it might get priced into oblivion. It might not be affordable for all the people it's really supposed to appeal to, like with the new Acura NSX or the Honda NSX. I feel like hybridizing it's going to be the only way to keep it around that they're willing to do. So we'll see. But it's sad because, you know, these cars run on dead dinosaurs to oversimplify it, but, you know, emissions regulations are making these dragons and Godzillas fall under the threat of extinction. 1320 video, going back to the roots, street racing in Texas. Man, cars are fast these days. Twin turbo Huracans, extremely fast Honda Civics that smoke people hard. It's really cool to see content like that. You know, that's old school content, old school 1320 video content. Like some of the first videos I ever watched on YouTube were 1320 videos like Cash Days or Street Kings videos. Mostly a bunch of guys in their Fox body Mustangs and their V8s, you know, doing really sketchy shit on a country road in the dark. It was cool to see that. If you guys remember, back in the day, underground racing, all the fastest cars were twin turbo Gallardos with those not so great E-gear transmissions. Some of them had Hollingers, I think, for the really high horsepower cars. Back in the day when your car had to run on MS-109 race fuel. But nowadays, the fastest cars, I think the fastest Huracan is Drag 965s, and his is I think it's a Huracan Performante. But the fastest cars are still the Huracans, because the fucking GTR has still failed to qualify again at TX2K. fucking rip. And then you've got all the twin turbo STOs. Because apparently there's a lot of people out there with a ton of money. As soon as these Huracan STOs came out, people were like, hey, Underground Racing, I want you to make this car fast and I want you to make it all-wheel drive. An all-wheel drive STO, a car only offered in rear-wheel drive. I'm sorry about the lighting. Also, I just want to say, I've been getting really into IMSA lately. This is my unpaid ad for IMSA real quick, okay? If you guys haven't been following IMSA, you should. It's really, really fun stuff to watch. Okay, I'm not a big Formula One guy. I like GT racing, where you can look at a car and go, that's a racing version of the car I have in my driveway. Or the car I could go to a showroom and buy. I like racing like that. And so IMSA, if you want to watch, it's I think it's called, you've got GTD and GTD Pro. GTD is usually with privately owned race teams, and then GTD Pro are race teams more kind of officially affiliated with the manufacturers, because I think GTD has Turner Motorsport, and then GTD Pro has some official BMW team, for example. And they're using the M4 GT3s. And I gotta tell you, those cars look pretty cool despite the tombstone grills. And it's good racing. Obviously, I'm always rooting for BMW. And they're doing pretty good. Those M4s are performing. They're pretty stout. They had some bad luck in the first couple races with, while in the lead, getting hit by other cars, sometimes in different classes, which makes things interesting because you've got the prototype cars or the LMP cars having to navigate around the slower GT cars, and it's really interesting. Like, for example, on Long Beach, everything's really narrow, and you just think, man, I would just curb my wheels and rip a fender off, and these guys are making aggressive overtake maneuvers in the corners. It's wild how skilled these guys are. It's cool to watch the full races. They also have highlights too. I hope BMW has a good, even if not a full championship win, I hope they have some kind of good podium finish. They're doing pretty good. They've had some good wins on some individual races. They had one race, a really good one, between a 720 GT3 race car and the 721, but then BMW won on a technicality because I think the 720 was underweight. Not great to win on a technicality. I don't think that really fills you with pride, but it's more points towards the win, I suppose. But it was a good race. It's really good action. I really recommend you guys check it out. Because you've got, let's just list off the roster real quick. You got the BMWs. You got Lamborghini Huracan GT3 race cars. You got Ferrari 488 race cars. You've got, there's an Aston Martin GT3 car in there. I think there's an Acura NSX GT3 car. There's a few Mercedes AMG race cars. I don't know if there's any Porsches in there. I don't think there are. I don't remember seeing any. I don't think there's an Audi R8 in there either. But there's a good assortment of cars. And then there's the prototype cars too. Obviously those are worth watching because those are insane and those are fast. Who would have thought Cadillac made really good race cars? That really opened my eyes when I realized that they made really good race cars. Of course, I had the garage door open to give myself some fresh air, but it was blocking the light that would have, kept me from being a noir silhouette. So, oh well. And lastly, we've got to talk about DDE. This might require a whole clip of its own, but DDE, let's be real here. There are a lot of great automotive YouTube channels out there, but Daily Driven Exotics has managed to perfectly corner the market on exotic car content when it comes to capturing the lifestyle and all the wacky stuff you can do. And they're always trying to find ways to push the envelope and treat their cars the way I might treat this Mustang. And recently, they've gone even further to the point that they've knocked something off their bucket list, and they participated in Gumball from Toronto to Miami, 3,000 miles in a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ with a Gentani F1 exhaust. That's a loud car, and that's a lot of driving. Almost as many miles as I do in a week as well. I do about 3,500-ish in my semi, but I get a guaranteed 10 hours of sleep every day. I don't think they had that, but they've managed to keep, raising the bar for themselves. They've got their insane 550 Maranello, with a custom one-off body kit. Most of us have to find body kits that we can bolt onto our cars that other companies have already made. They've just decided, We want to make something 100% our own. That is the ultimate dream. I don't even know how much that costs. I'm not brave enough to find out. Their Ferrari F12 with the twin turbo kit inspired by the Ken Block Unicorn. That's insane. They've got a Porsche Carrera GT, like a 1500 horsepower Lamborghini Huracan. They've got a Diablo SV and a Lamborghini Murcielago. They've got an incredible assortment of cars. The only way to raise the bar, if they even can, is to get a hypercar and treat the hypercar like they're supercars. I know they've looked at P1s. They had one briefly, but they weren't able to insure it. I think now they would be able to. But like with a McLaren P1, when it comes to aftermarket support, I don't think there's much. But if you wanted to do something insane with a McLaren P1, and you couldn't afford a McLaren P1 GTR, like a race car, you could send your car off to Lanzante Limited, the people who are responsible for the LM versions of the P1 GTRs, you know, the 6 one-of-a-kind or 6 of a kind street legal versions of the P1 GTRs with the stroked versions of the P1 GTR's engines and are street legal. And I think a P1 LM even technically in my headcanon, holds the road legal record on the Nürburgring, even faster than Porsche, which isn't a surprise. It's got more power than the P1 GTR, but we're not talking about that. I really would love to talk about that, but that's not what this is about. You've got a P1 road car. You send it off to Lanzante. They convert it to the HDK spec, the high downforce kit. It makes your car look like a P1 GTR, but you've still got air conditioning, the P1 road car interior, you get a plaque, and the P1 GTR style exhaust, the wing. You've got the whole thing without paying $6 million for it, I think. I don't know how much it costs to do the HDK kit. But man, if I had a P1 and I could afford it, I would do that for sure. Because it definitely doesn't ruin the car. It looks sick. So I personally hope they do that, because if they don't do it, I'm gonna have to. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna do that. So I hope they do it. DDE is pretty cool. They keep raising the bar. So it's not any surprise that they're one of my biggest inspirations for what I do here and what I aspire to accomplish later on. You know, thanks to them, I feel like getting a Huracan one day is something I can realistically aspire to do. So, you know, hopefully I'm correct in thinking I can do that and believing in myself. And hopefully one day they can sign the dash of the car. And then I'll hopefully even be able to go up from there. And now, no more news. I would like to move on to a car review, okay? And today's car review is a cool one. There's some historical significance in my opinion. It's the oldest version of the car behind me. And when I say oldest, it's the first Ford Mustang to ever use the engine that is in this car. The Coyote 5.0 V8, a very special car, a very special engine, very significant. I would say a huge player in the renaissance of Ford. Oh, that's a nice throttle. That doesn't really bite at you. And that because you got all the gears, it's changing gears so much the throttle feels like it's biting at you. All right, everyone, today we are in a Ford Mustang. You probably expected me to be in the 2110 speed that we got not too long ago, but instead I wanted to show you guys something a bit more historic. This is a 2014 Ford Mustang GT, and this is a very special car. Well, for one, because it's a manual and I thought it'd be important to experience a manual because I really miss driving a manual, but also because this is from the 2013-2014 Mustangs that introduced the infamous Coyote 5.0. And the Coyote 5.0 is a really important part of Ford's history because it's from their kind of Renaissance era where they came out with this engine, they came out with the Ford Focus RS, and a whole bunch of other really successful vehicles. To me, the Coyote is the kind of the famous cheat code engine because, oh, I can feel that live axle, especially with those slicks. So I'll talk a little bit more about this car specifically because this car is not stock. But I love that. There's a lot more drone with this exhaust than the factory one. This engine's very important, and it's called kind of the cheat code engine by a lot of people because originally, what you'd do if you wanted to get a V8, make power, and whatever chassis you want to do, you'd kind of go with an LS or this, that, and the other. And those are cheap to kind of swap in and kind of Lego build your way to success. Whereas the Coyote, while it's not necessarily a cheap swap, but if you grab a car that already has it in the platform, that's quite strong because these are super easy to make power, famously, whether it's NA, boosted, supercharged, procharged, twin turbo, what have you. And even from the factory, the power delivery is really nice. And these came with 420 horsepower and a very nice kind of power delivery, how I should say. A lot of good low-end torque. I believe the 302 Boss, because of that different intake manifold, it was less kind of down low and more up top. So it really kind of depends characteristically. But as an everyday car, you know, if you wanted to just leave it NA and keep it reliable, because these engines are fairly straightforward to take care of as far as I'm aware. They're pretty bulletproof.
Also, heads up, this is completely stock except for a cold air.
Really?
Yes.
So it's completely stock except for a cold air.
Yeah, completely stock except for a cold air and an axle back, my bad.
And it's just on good tires.
Yes, it's on a really good tire.
I'm a little surprised by how soft the brakes feel.
That is my fault.
Okay.
The rears need to be bled.
Okay. Stock clutch is easy to drive though.
Very, and they can handle about 600 wheel.
I can believe it, and that's nice, having that kind of power, not having to really rev it to the sky too much to get it to move.
Well, it revs to 7,000 stock. That's where it actually is comfortable with.
And it revving to 7,000 in an American V8 is kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's still a cross-plane crank engine as well.
Yeah.
So
having that red line is neat. But it still sounds like an American V8 because of that crossplane.
Exactly.
So basically, this car is intake, axle back, and a very ideal tire.
Yes.
What's the rear gear ratio on this?
355.
355. We're not going to 0 to 60 in one gear. This ain't a GT500, but that's kind of neat as well. Because the 2013, 2014 GT500s with those 5.8 Trinity motors and it was like, what, 331, 313 rear ratio, because they wanted to go 200 miles an hour with 660 horsepower, and then with the Super Snake, if you wanted 850, well, that's more like if you want to go to jail really, really quickly with a warranty. This was the body style of car that got me into Mustangs originally, the GT500, the Coyote engine. I just always thought how interesting it was that American cars were going from back in the day being the car to have because it was cool, and then kind of in the 90s the tuner cars came along and they were cheap and also ideal to modify. You know, LS motors started coming around, these cars started coming around, and the whole implications of that is that they kind of had this resurgence where now American, you know, car makers make not just muscle cars, but very serious sports cars. I don't think they've quite gotten out of the stigma yet that they can make good sports cars or not, but with the C8, these Mustangs, it's making it a lot easier to believe in them and a lot harder to doubt them. And this is the, I know a lot of people have had a lot of things to say about the MT82 transmission that's in these. I know a lot of people like T56s, they like TR6060s, and for good reason. We don't plan on breaking it today, because I've heard a lot of reports of people saying, you know, if you try and power shift these transmissions, you might lose third gear or break synchros, or basically just do what my WRX did and basically shred itself to pieces because it did not like being a transmission anymore. But in this, you know, as long as you give it a chance to shift, it doesn't really feel like it's in danger. It likes being shifted. It feels like a driver's car. And I think that's kind of the really cool thing about American car makers, is that I think they enjoy making a good driver's experience more than other car makers. Because you've got a really nice seating position, even with the massive, you know, customary muscle car hood. You still have good visibility. You can see out the back. Mirrors are fine. Tire pressure mount. So as we talk more and more about this car, one of the other interesting things about it is that this has very soft brakes that need to be bled. You are not kidding.
Yes.
Is that this car is on some very meaty tires. I don't know who makes the wheels.
So the wheels are Forgestar F14s.
Okay.
And then the tires are a Mickey Thompson ET Drag.
Okay.
They are a 28-10-5 15 tire, so it's on a 15-inch wheel. And the tread patch is a 305 millimeter.
Neat. And so you can really feel it. So you were explaining that the combination of the live axle and these tires kind of leads to that kind of feeling of the sway.
Yeah, you have a little bit of sway.
To an untrained person that doesn't know the difference, that would almost feel like a weird sort of body roll.
Yeah, it feels almost like a body roll, or that the rear end is just floating around, really. Until you actually get to that point where the sidewall is stretched enough where it feels like a legitimate hardwall tire.
Sure. I think Mickey Thompson has proven themselves. They don't need my validation, but obviously they're a very good tire. They make very good tires. Because you see them on muscle cars, you see them on Supras, you see them on anything that needs to hook once they start having tons and tons of torque. So you've got a wheel and tire setup that can survive after you mess with the car. Did I just go from second to fifth again?
Yes.
Man, that's such a short throw. So the other interesting thing about that, because Ford offered a short throw kit for these cars, didn't it?
No, but what you can do is that they make short throw shifters for this car that reduces it by about 35%. So you're talking about
A really tiny throw.
Yeah, the short throw, probably about 3 inches at most.
Because I'm really used to the really long throws of WRXs and things like that. So a little backstory. Behind the camera is Tanner, because I've decided to employ the owner of the car I'm reviewing as my cameraman, because my headrest mount is in the M3, and that is in customary M3 fashion being serviced. He and I first met, you had, was it a Blob Eye or a Hawkeye?
It was a 04 WRX.
Was that the
so it was a
Bug Eye?
Blob Eye.
Oh, it was a Blob Eye. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. And that was back when I had my WRX. And you know that the throws in those cars from factory are very long.
Yes, very.
It was a 6-speed, which was fun. But I'm very used to the really long WRX throw and also the really janky 10-speed semi sort of throw as well. Getting used to this is actually a weird learning curve because the clutch is fine, the throws are fine. It's not like I'm missing gears, I'm just skipping gears. That's the funny thing. But rev matching in this car is actually quite easy. It's very notchy, which is very important. Ford does a good job. I don't think it's really fair to them to really kind of underestimate them, because not long after this you have the S550, right? And even then, to a lot of people, it's just another Mustang. They didn't realize the implications of going from live axle to IRS. Not that I really want to dog on the live axle. You just have to not drive it like it has an IRS. But the benefit of having the live axle is that straight line speed, that's what this car is made to do. And with these tires especially, even better suited for it. Whereas the S550, like Tanner and I were talking about before, is that they were more about circuit records and things like that, as evidenced by the GT500 being able to keep up with the new Ford GT. Just a neat transition period in Ford's history, being able to experience all of this. And then being able to go from this into the 10-speed, which we'll focus on at some point, which feels like a totally different car, except for the engine, because the power is delivered really differently. I really hope I do this right. Okay, now I did it right. This isn't the stock tune, is it? Because you have the air filter on here?
No, it is completely stock. So this is the stock tune from Ford. I bought the car with a no tune required cold air. So the car came with the axle back and came with the no tune required K&N cold air. And
okay.
It's supposed to give you 5 horsepower, but I believe that's a little wrong. It probably
Is it noticeably more?
No, not by any stretch of the mind.
Oh, really? Is it a lot less, do you think?
Honestly, I've been in some other stock cars that I feel have performed better.
Interesting.
Than this.
Any guesses as to what the main factor was?
Intake air temps.
Okay.
You're talking about a larger inlet, so it's a 110 millimeter inlet for this cold air, but it's actually a closed air box.
Oh my God, I just stalled it. That's embarrassing. That's a really fast starter.
Yes.
Even the S550 doesn't start that quickly.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing that I was always on the fence about when getting a Mustang, because you've got tons of options. You've got the 1314s with the live axle, you go 15 plus, you have IRS. Transmission options are typically the same. With the 15 through 17s, you got the 6R80. I believe that is also an option on these.
Yes, it is.
Then you got the 10R80, the 10-speed. Different body styles. You still got that signature Ford look that they haven't shied away from, which, interestingly, not a lot of companies have really managed to do very well. I'm about to make a comparison to Porsche that's probably going to get a lot of interesting comments, but responses in the comments down below. But there aren't many car manufacturers out there that stick to a very similar kind of body style archetype. That's third gear. That feels much better. The MT82 is growing on me. I think it's one of those things that the internet kind of just tells you to shy away from.
It very much so is.
Well, that's so nice.
They can handle about 550 horsepower and be fine. As long as the main issue is people actually forcing them into gear. That's the main issue, because like I was telling you about previously, with the issues with stock clutch and stock throw, or stock shifter, I should say, they have a lockout sometimes when you're in WOD. So people will force them into gear and chip a tooth, or they'll cause issues of the gears grinding, whatnot. So that's the main issue with these, is mainly the drivers, because I have abused this car to no end and have no issue.
Yeah, it feels fine.
Yeah.
It drives nice. I guess reliability, if you want to drive it unintelligently, I guess.
Yes.
But I'm not feeling any problems with it. So.
And you're also talking about a company, Ben Calamer, famous in the Coyote world. They make transmissions for $3,500 that handles 1,000 horsepower, the tire, and 1,200 foot-pound of torque.
Oh, Jesus.
So you're talking about...
Eventually, you got to worry more about the chassis than the transmission at that point, don't you?
Actually, these chassis have gone 8s, stock chassis. So...
Is that without a cage?
That's from the factory suspension.
Again, we need to give Ford props for that. Also, by the way, the road we're on, I don't really care about doxing this road. It's like the Midwestern abridged version of the Pacific Coast Highway, though with fewer police and a lot less traffic. It's still a similar type of scenery, really beautiful roads, and really good for a car that's really good at going straight. Then I will say, autos these days, a lot of people say I drive an automatic because it's faster, and then they're driving like an 03 350Z with a slushbox gearbox. But the 6R80, the 10 speeds, and all that, I can see it. But the way the power comes on in this engine, now I'm getting comfortable. Reeling out the gears in this is nice, and it's not, with the 355, it's not unusable, and it's daily drivable, you know.
I do daily this car.
Yeah,
this is my daily.
Yeah, even with our Mustang, it's a weekend car, but it's a really good. Did the seats go back on this too?
Yes. You can actually expand the trunk space by folding down the rear seats.
Ooh, Oh, I love the pedal position. Not to harp on you, but those brakes scare the shit out of me a little bit.
What you do is you just baby them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like I'm in the semi going down a hill and I'm melting my brakes.
Oh yeah.
That's what it reminds me.
These are
of.
actually brand new brakes, which is why.
Oh, I see.
So that's part of the issue.
I mean, they work. It's
Yes.
just you're waiting for that bite, and you're like, I need to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly because I'm in your vehicle and not mine. Otherwise, I would be very comfortable with it.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
like how you probably are, because you expect it. I very much like this though. The shifter though, I actually like the design of. I don't know if I'm going to get criticisms for how I like to shift, because I like to shift like this and not like this. Mainly because I got criticized by my CDL trainer for grabbing it like this for reasons I'm not going to say on YouTube, because he compared it to how you might grab something else. so now I grab it like this because it makes me very self-conscious. I will say, one of the criticisms I always heard about older Mustangs previous to the S550 was that the interior didn't age well. But this doesn't rattle. I mean, sure, there's a good amount of plastic in here, but it doesn't rattle. This has 48,000 miles on it. It doesn't really feel like it. I imagine it doesn't feel too different than how it did when it was new. You've got, this is the GT Premium, so we've got the shaker system, you know, so you can really bump your tunes. It's got a CD player, which is a neat sight these days, and you've also got a touchscreen. I did not know these came with touchscreens, so you can go through all kinds of, what would be like the home button? Is it the menu button?
So this is the home button, basically.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
and you can have two different displays running. Other amenity things. Now I can look at the steering wheel. This steering wheel was actually really previous to the 13 and 14. Did it also have this steering wheel? Because this, I feel like
Yes.
I've seen this steering wheel in every Mustang I've ever seen.
So they had very similar steering wheels, all the way from like 3 valves.
Oh wow.
So you're talking 2005.
Yeah.
And that these were redesigned for the 2010 body style, which was this body, but actually had a 3 valve in it.
Right, because they kept the 4.6 up until
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Was it-
2011 was when the first Coyote car came out.
Oh, okay. So it was actually 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014.
Correct.
Those model years that had the Coyote.
Yes. And then
Oh.
this specific body with this hood and a couple other little different things like the tail lights, the bumpers,
The sequential taillights.
yeah, stuff like that. All of that was modern into 2013, 2014.
Right.
So it was only 2 years for this specific car. And another really cool thing is with this, they actually have, you can actually go through here and have all of your different gauges.
Oh, it's like having an access port in a just straight away in the car.
Yep. So you have all of normal things. You have oil pressure, cylinder head temp, air fuel, oil temperature, and you also have independent gauges that tell you whether it's appropriate or not.
What would brake performance be? Is it like stop distance or?
It tells you how what brake life is, how hot they are, stuff like that.
Oh,
You have your braking and G gauge.
that's a G gauge. I was gonna say.
Yeah. So like you can tell like your right, left, anything like that.
I love that. That's a really good summary of how Ford builds their sports cars. They come with a G gauge.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you can also do quarter miles and eighth miles in this car, right here. So you can just automatic start it. You can do a countdown. You can do whatever you want. And if you actually do a countdown, this is a cool thing. It has like a little tree.
It gives you a tree.
Yeah. So this is one of those things that
Nice.
in this car is pretty interesting because you're talking about
Track use only.
Yeah. If you're moving, it will not turn on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to be stopped to do it.
Oh, wow.
So
Well, the interesting thing about that, I'll let you hold this for a second.
and this is also only in the premiums and only in the track.
Like the tech package or whatever?
Yes.
So
Here,
the okay, so my immediate thought when it says track use only on that, where do they expect people to use that? At a track that doesn't already have a tree?
Yeah.
Where are those? I think they know what they were doing, but I think they were also covering themselves by saying that's track use only.
And that's why it's also locked as well.
That makes sense. and trunk space, I imagine. We'll be able to look at that because we can take this back to...
you can fit a body in there.
I don't know if we can say that. I don't know. We'll keep it in there. I don't know if we can... Hypothetically, in case, any law enforcement agents are watching, that is totally... Okay, funny story. When we bought our Mustang, that was what the salesman said. And so my wife literally climbed into the Mustang to test it.
Really?
And she's the first person at that dealership to be like, all right, pop the trunk. So it's definitely true. Probably don't want to say it over and over again. Oh, you said that basically doing this, hitting that will...
Yeah. So you can turn off your traction control.
That'll turn off TC. Is it a very...
I'll tell you that.
And then, but it still has some assist on there.
Yeah, so like it'll still pump your front brakes and stuff like that.
And so, in your opinion, because I'm not going to test your traction control or with it off in another person's vehicle, but in your opinion, would you consider it a fairly invasive or a fairly modern kind of traction control?
It's not invasive.
So it's not going to cause an accident like how a
No.
lot of old school traction control might.
It can in certain aspects. That's actually kind of where that meme comes from. I drive a Mustang, like driving into crowds and whatnot.
Sure.
That became really popular with like 3 valves in this body style, and they have very similar types of traction control.
I remember that. That all started during a Mustang week in like 2015.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember that.
So the main thing is if you're not driving like a jerk off,
You really can... right, because I've never driven a car with slicks on it before, and I haven't died. The only thing I did is I made a fool of myself driving a manual for the first time in 2 years, but other than that, it's a pretty simple car to drive.
Yeah, it's very simplistic. It's comfortable. It's very much so reminiscent of a old school muscle car with modern amenities.
Right,
and that's what it was designed for.
It's that's like I was saying before. It's a muscle car that can also be a sports car.
Yes.
I think that's what's really neat about it, and I feel like it would also be a great road trip car. I don't know how these cars kind of handle with heat and things like that.
Amazing.
But because I know with a lot of boosted cars you want good cooling, but NA I imagine it would do pretty well.
You get 20, for me, like if I just have it on cruise control doing like 65, I get like 24, 26 miles an hour.
Which is fantastic.
In a manual car.
Which is
as well.
fantastic. So, okay. Well, I guess, honestly, not a bad grand touring option because you got the space for the luggage. Very comfortable seats. You said that these can come in leather. Is that just an option, or is that part of like a trim package?
So normally they are cloth seats. You can option in leather seats, and it also comes with trim packages. So if you get a trim package, there are things like leather seats, heated seats, stuff like that. That's standardized.
So you can have, you said cotton and leather. What is this that's in between then? Because this ain't leather, obviously.
It's just a cloth.
It's cloth with this kind of
it's
a pleather
padding.
with a pleather covering sort of thing.
Yeah. So like this is just cloth right here.
Oh, now I feel the cloth.
Yeah, and then everything is just leather.
And it's bolstered, and then on top of it. Okay, I
Yeah.
see. Was there ever a time? Was this ever a different material in any different cars, or was it kind of the same material even in like the Chevys?
So
and
the
things like that?
the 3 valves and whatnot are more plasticky. They're not. They
Yeah,
don't have that give to them.
This is kind of
a rubber.
I guess that's what. Yeah, because it does feel a little bit like a rubber thing, almost. This is a horrible simile or analogy, but it kind of reminds me of the sort of thing that they'd use as a ground material in like a children's play park, but with a lot less give.
Yeah,
but kind of that material. So I guess that's kind of why you have no rattles in here.
So if you actually look at like a 66 Mustang and whatnot, 65 Mustang, whatever, the 65 and a halfs, same difference both apart. This style dash is almost the exact same. So it has like this come over and cross and down.
It's very symmetrical look to it.
Yes. So it was, and on top of that, the actual feel of it is very similar. So my brother-in-law had a 66 Mustang that we were restoring for a long time, and after owning this, I didn't realize how similar that they were. They really modernized a 66 Mustang.
The original recipe.
As much as they could. They were like, we're going to give you a live axle, we're going to make a reminiscent interior, we're going to give you a great feeling car, We're going to give you a V8, a manual, and call it a day.
I think they achieved what they were going for. Because the other neat thing with a lot of those original Mustangs, because you had tires and suspension that you would not want to do the things we have just done in this car.
Yes.
Now I think you're right that they were going for that kind of original recipe, because you've got the same body style. I really do like this symmetrical look of the interior of the Mustang, because it almost looks like, you know, you could go into Photoshop, invert this, put it over there, invert that, and put it over there, because it's all so satisfyingly similar.
Yes.
Obviously, in real life, it's much more complicated than that. When I was overseas, you know, my teacher had a 13 car that was made to look like a very, you know, I'm not going to say the name of the movie the car is from, because people have gotten sued for even mentioning the car. It had, what was his name? Nicolas Cage in it. We know what movie we're talking about. He made his car look like that car, like a modern version of it. And he was so sad he couldn't bring it with him because it wasn't even right-hand drive. Because the country we were in, if your car wasn't right-hand drive, you couldn't do it, even though we love Mustangs. All right, thank you all so much for watching today's episode of the Ice Age. I really like doing this. I really wanted to do this much sooner. We'll be doing a review of this car in the next episode. We've already got the car, so that should hopefully come a bit sooner and won't take as long as this one to finish. But thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to all the members watching. Thank you to all the people watching the free clips. If you want to see the full episode, make sure to become a member for 99 cents, and you get all the membership content. Easy peasy. If you can't spare 99 cents, I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to say you shouldn't be watching YouTube. So anyways, thank you all so much for subscribing. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good day. Enjoy your cars. Enjoy your dreams. Make them real. Don't doubt yourself like how I used to, because this is what happens when you don't. And have an awesome day.